Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we're going to be making the grabber much more reliable, and also we're going to be making it possible to drop a grabbed component so that we can throw it around and generally have it be a little bit more useful. Let's dive in and see how this is done. Now, the reason we're often not able to pick up this gargoyle is that components that are simulating physics for performance sake will go to sleep when they have been still for a certain amount of time. And that's what we're seeing. This gargoyle's physics simulation is going to sleep and it's not being woken up when we attach to it with our physics handle. So what we need to learn to do is to wake it up when we hit it with a sphere trace. Now let's go and have a look at the U primitive component documentation. We've seen that the U primitive component is the thing returned by our hit result. But what actually is a primitive component? So it says it here in the documentation that a primitive component is a scene component that contains or generates some sort of geometry and is rendered or used as collision data. So generally speaking, primitive components are ones that can simulate physics. So we can expect to find some physics simulation methods on here. And what I'm going to look for is a function with the keyword wake in it. We're going to look through a few functions until we find one that says wake all rigid bodies. Rigid bodies are essentially a physics term for objects that simulate physics. So you can see it has a void return type, doesn't take any arguments. So we should be able to just call this when we are trying to attach to it. So if we go to our grabber CPP, inside our if statement, we've hit this component, we're about to grab it. The first thing we need to do is maybe let's make a variable to store this U primitive component. So we'll have a U primitive component pointer called hit component. Set that equal to the hit result dot get component. And then using that hit component pointer, we can arrow wake all rigid bodies and then put the parentheses and a semicolon at the end. So this should just give that component a kick, wake it up so that it responds to the physics handle. Now let's replace where we've done hit result .get component in our physics handle call to grab component location, because we've now got a variable for that. And let's recompile. When that's done, let's go ahead and hit play and let the gargoyle sit a little bit on the floor for now and let it go to sleep, and then try picking it up. And you'll notice that we've got no problems picking it up, letting it lie on the floor, whatever, it's going to be fine and wake up those physics rigid bodies and start simulating them so that it can be lifted and grabbed. Now you may have noticed that we aren't currently able to release the physics handle, so that's going to be your challenge to do that in the release function. So you're going to call release component on that physics handle. That is a function that's available on the physics handle pointer. You're going to check first if we have a get grabbed component. So if you get grabbed component, it returns a pointer to the grabbed component. That pointer will be null if the physics handle isn't currently grabbing anything. So you can use that to check whether we've got anything and only release if we are currently grabbing something. And as a bonus, you can have a go to see if we can set the target again only if we are grabbing something. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, welcome back. So let's go over into grabber CPP. I'm going to go into the release function and remove the release log. And in here, we're going to put an if statement and we're going to say if, and now we need to get hold of our physics handle. So we're going to, first of all, do a U physics handle component pointer, which we're going to call the physics handle, and set that equal to get physics handle, like so. Then we're going to say if the physics handle is equal to null pointer, we want to go ahead and return, because we're not going to be able to do anything, release anything if we don't have a physics handle at all. Then we want to check whether we are currently holding on to anything with our physics handle. So we can say if the physics handle arrow get grabbed component parentheses not equals null pointer, Then inside the body of this if statement means we've got something currently grabbed. Well, then we're going to do a physics handle arrow release component, just going to let it go as the name would suggest. And we want to not set the target location in tick if we have got a physics handle that's not currently grabbing anything. So here in our tick component, we're going to put an if statement that's going to be exactly the same. It's going to be saying physics handle arrow get grabbed component not equal to null pointer. Then in the body of the if statement, we're going to put the calculation of the target location and the setting target location in that physics handle as well. Let's recompile and try this out. Let's go ahead and hit play and try and grab the gargoyle. And then if I let go of the mouse, it drops down to the floor again. And it seems to not be affected by whether it's awake or asleep. We seem to be waking it up no matter whether every time we're picking it up, essentially. So that seems to be working exactly as I'd like it to. It's not getting stuck. It's feeling just about right. The only weird thing slightly is when I move into it, you can see it does this weird jittering because it's actually colliding with the player. Now we can fix this just a little bit by going to our gargoyle in the details pane, selecting the all category, scrolling down to collision and looking at our custom collision preset. And down in the object responses, we'll see a bit more about this later on, there is a pawn object response. This basically says, should I collide with the pawn, or what should my response be to the pawn? Well, I'm going to set it to overlap with the pawn, and that means that if it collides with me, it essentially just ignores it. And then one more thing we have to do is, because this is actually made up of two static meshes, they've got their own collision settings. I'm going to go down to the dirt mound, that's the thing underneath the gargoyle. And here I'm actually just going to simplify things, I'm going to make the dirt mound part have no collision. So I'm going to switch to the no collision preset. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit play, grab the gargoyle from the floor. And now you can see when I'm running with it, there isn't any of that weird glitching because it's not trying to collide with the player collision mesh. Great stuff. In this lecture, we have learned how to make our grabber much more reliable and also how we can release the grabbing component. Great stuff. I'll see you in the next lecture.